The moment I realized my sister had stolen my winning lottery ticket, I was sitting on my worn-out couch, scrolling through Instagram. There she was, Bianca, draped in designer clothes, holding up my ticket with the caption, "Sometimes good things happen to good people. Blessed Utker lottery winner." My name is Tiffany, and until yesterday, I was just another overworked accountant trying to make ends meet. Now, I'm watching my sister steal my future right before my eyes. "Oh my God," I whispered, my phone slipping from my trembling hands. The memories of yesterday flooded back, checking the numbers 3 times, screaming with joy in my tiny apartment, carefully placing the ticket in my purse. The same purse Bianca had accidentally spilled her coffee on during our weekly family dinner. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend Destiny. "Girl, did you see Bianca's post? Since when does she play the lottery?" I couldn't even type a response. The comments were pouring in under Bianca's post. "OMG Queen, you deserve this. Living your best life. So happy for you, B." The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the peephole, I saw my mother's perfectly coiffed hair. "Tiffany, open up. We need to celebrate your sister's amazing news." She practically sang the words. I opened the door, my stomach in knots. "Mom, that ticket?" "I know. Isn't it wonderful?" She breezed past me, her expensive perfume filling my small living room. "Bianca just called me. $20 million, can you believe it? Finally, someone in this family is going to make something of themselves." The casual cruelty of her words hit like a slap. "Mom, that ticket is mine. I bought it, I won." She froze, then laughed. "Oh, honey, don't be ridiculous. Bianca showed me the security footage from the store where she bought it." "What? That's impossible." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Bianca. "Thanks for the coffee spill distraction yesterday, sis. Karma's finally paying me back for all those years I had to look out for you." "Look at that. She's even thanking you." Mom peered at my phone. Such a thoughtful girl. I felt sick. "Get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out." My voice was shaking. "Both of you have been gaslighting me my entire life, and I'm done." Mom's face hardened. "This jealousy isn't attractive, Tiffany. I raised you better than this." "No, you raised Bianca better than this. You just tolerated me." The sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit a nerve. Mom gathered her designer purse and headed for the door. "When you're ready to apologize and celebrate your sister's good fortune properly, you know where to find us." The door clicked shut behind her. I sank to the floor, my mind racing. Bianca had always been manipulative. But this was next level. She must have followed me yesterday, seen me buy the ticket. The coffee spill wasn't an accident, it was calculated, just like everything else she did. My phone rang. Jonathan, my old friend from law school who'd stuck around even after I dropped out to support our family. "Tiff, I just saw Bianca's post. Please tell me this isn't what I think it is." "She stole my ticket, John. She actually stole my winning lottery ticket." There was a long pause. "Do you have any proof of purchase?" "No, I paid cash. I always do for lottery tickets. It's my stupid superstition." "Security footage?" "Bianca's apparently handled that already. God knows how." Another pause. "Come to my office. Now." "Why?" "There's nothing—" "Because I know you, Tiff. You're smarter than her. Always have been. And right now, you need to start thinking like a lawyer, not a victim." Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that your sister just made a very public mistake. She's going to flaunt this money, document everything on social media, create a paper trail. And you're going to let her." I wiped my eyes. A plan already forming. "You want me to give her enough rope to hang herself?" "Exactly. Get over here. We're going to make sure karma hits your sister so hard she'll think she won the unlucky lottery." For the first time since seeing that Instagram post, I smiled. Bianca might have won this round, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail about me. I always played the long game. I grabbed my keys and headed out. It was time to show my sister that some people are smart enough to get revenge served at exactly the right temperature. Jonathan's office was a stark contrast to my apartment. all gleaming glass and polished wood. He was already pulling up social media feeds when I walked in. "Your sister's been busy," he said, turning his monitor toward me. 3 Instagram posts, 2 TikToks, and a Facebook Live video, all in the last 2 hours. I dropped into the leather chair across from his desk. "She's always been an attention seeker." "No, she's being sloppy." Jonathan leaned forward. "Look at this caption. Sometimes the universe puts opportunities right in front of you and you just have to grab them." "Subtle," I muttered. "Exactly. She's practically confessing." He started typing. "First things first. We need to document everything. Every post, every comment, every interaction." My phone buzzed. Dad this time. "Hey, sweetheart." His voice was gentle but weak, just like always. "Your mother told me about your reaction to Bianca's news." "Dad, she stole—" "Now, Tiffany, let's not throw around accusations. You know your sister's always been lucky." I gripped the phone tighter. "Lucky? Is that what we're calling theft now?" "Your mother and I raised you both to support each other. Bianca's always looked out for you. By stealing my college fund? By sabotaging my job interviews? By stealing my lottery ticket?" Jonathan caught my eye and shook his head, mouthing, "Don't tip her off." I took a deep breath. "You know what, Dad? You're right. I'm just surprised. Tell Bianca I'm happy for her." The relief in his voice was palpable. "That's my girl. We're having a celebration dinner tonight. You'll come?" "Wouldn't miss it." I hung up and looked at Jonathan. "Please tell me you have a plan." He smiled. "Better. I have 3 plans. But first you need to convince everyone you've accepted this." "Play nice? That's your big strategy?" "No, my strategy is to let Bianca think she's won. People get careless when they're winning." He pulled up another window. "She's hired a social media manager named Skylar, fresh out of college, eager to prove herself." "And?" "And you're going to become Skylar's new best friend." The celebration dinner was exactly what I expected, Bianca holding court while our parents beamed. I played my part perfectly, smiling and nodding as she detailed her plans for the money. "I'm thinking a mansion in Beverly Hills," she gushed, "with a pool shaped like a bee." "That's amazing," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "You should document everything on social media. Your followers would love that." Bianca's eyes lit up. "They would, wouldn't they? Skylar, make a note." The young woman beside her nodded, fingers flying over her phone. I caught her eye and smiled warmly. "You must be so busy managing all this," I said. "Want to grab a coffee sometime? I'd love to hear about your work." "Really?" Skylar looked surprised and pleased. "That would be great." "Tiffany's great with numbers," Bianca interrupted, a hint of warning in her voice. "Maybe she could help you manage my accounts." I kept my face neutral. "Only if you need it, of course. Actually," Skylar brightened, "I could use help with the budget tracking. Would you mind?" "Of course not. Anything for my sister." Mom beamed. "See, Bianca? I told you Tiffany would come around." Later that night, back at Jonathan's office, I recounted the dinner. "Perfect," he said. "Skylar's your way in. But we need more than just access to her accounts. We need proof you bought that ticket." "I told you I paid cash." "Yes, but you checked the numbers online, right? From your phone or computer?" I sat up straighter. "My laptop. I was at home." "Which means there's a digital timestamp of you checking those exact numbers." He started typing again. "We're going to build this case piece by piece. Browser history, security footage from nearby stores showing you in the area, witness statements from the bodega owner. Will that be enough? Combined with Bianca's social media trail and the inevitable paper trail she'll leave spending the money, it'll be more than enough." He paused. "But you have to be patient. Let her dig herself deeper." I nodded, thinking of Bianca's smug face at dinner. "I can be patient. I've been dealing with her manipulation my whole life. What's a few more months?" "Good." Jonathan handed me a legal pad. "Now, Let's go through every interaction you've had with her in the past week. Every detail matters. As I began recounting the events, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to Bianca's schemes, I was going to beat her at her own game. And thanks to her social media addiction, she was going to help me do it. I can't believe she bought another Birkin bag. Skylar sighed, sliding into the coffee shop booth across from me. That's the third one this week. Over the past month, I'd become Skylar's unofficial therapist. Today's session was taking place at our usual spot, away from Bianca's usual haunts. How much has she spent so far? I asked, stirring my latte. Almost $2 million. Skylar lowered her voice. And that's just on shopping. The parties are getting crazy. Last night she had a champagne fountain installed in her hotel suite. I raised my eyebrows. Hotel suite? She says she's waiting for the perfect mansion. Meanwhile, she's burning through cash like... Skylar trailed off, looking guilty. Sorry, I shouldn't be telling you all this. Hey, I'm just glad she has someone responsible looking after her finances. My phone buzzed. A text from Destiny. You sure about this plan? Feels risky. I ignored it. Destiny had been worried since I'd told her what we were doing, but she hadn't grown up with Bianca. She didn't understand what was at stake. Speaking of finances, Skylar fidgeted with her cup. Something weird happened yesterday. I kept my expression neutral. Oh? Bianca was pretty drunk at this party, and she started talking about the lottery ticket. But her story kept changing. First, she said she bought it at Pete's Convenience on 5th, then it was that place near the park. Maybe she was just confused? Maybe. Skylar bit her lip. But then she said something about how you'd never prove anything without cameras. My heart raced, but I forced a laugh. That's just drunk talk. You know how she gets. Yeah, but... Skylar's phone chimed. Ugh, she wants me to come over. Something about planning a yacht party. Go, I smiled. Text me later? As soon as she left, I called Jonathan. She's starting to slip, I said without preamble. Getting drunk, talking about the ticket. Perfect. Is your phone set up to record? Yes, but... No buts. The next party she throws, you need to be there. The opportunity came sooner than expected. That weekend, Bianca hosted a casual gathering at her hotel penthouse. Casual meaning only 50 people instead of her usual 100. I arrived early, playing the supportive sister role. Need any help setting up? Bianca was already 3 glasses of champagne in. My baby sister, always so helpful. She draped an arm around me. Remember when we were kids and you'd always let me copy your homework? You mean when you'd take it without asking? She laughed, too loud. Same difference, just like this lottery thing, right? The universe knows I deserve nice things more than you do. My phone was recording in my pocket. I kept my voice light. What do you mean? Oh, come on. She rolled her eyes, grabbing another champagne bottle. We both know you'd have wasted that money on something boring like investments. She snorted. At least I know how to live. So you admit it wasn't your ticket? For a second, something sharp flashed in her eyes. Then she laughed again. You're so funny, sis. Always with the jokes. More guests started arriving, and Bianca drank more. And more. By midnight, she was holding court by the window, regaling everyone with stories. And then, she could barely stand straight. Then I saw her checking the numbers, and I thought, why should she get all the luck? I'm the pretty one. Several people laughed nervously. Skylar, standing nearby, looked uncomfortable. Bianca, I said softly, maybe we should get you some water. Don't patronize me. She whirled around, nearly falling. You think I don't know what you're doing? Playing nice, helping Skylar, being the perfect sister? She stumbled closer. But guess what? No one will ever believe you. I made sure of that. The room had gone quiet. My phone was still recording. What did you make sure of? I asked, keeping my voice steady. The cameras. She laughed wildly. Paid that sweet old security guard to lose the footage from that day. Can't prove what you can't see, right? Skylar gasped. Several guests started edging toward the door. I think that's enough partying for tonight, I said loudly. Everyone, thank you for coming. As people filed out, Bianca collapsed onto a sofa, already passing out. Skylar lingered, looking troubled. Tiffany, she started. It's okay, I said. She probably won't even remember this tomorrow. But I would, and more importantly, my phone had recorded every word. Later that night, I sent the audio to Jonathan. His response came immediately. This is exactly what we needed. Time for phase 2. I looked at my sleeping sister, sprawled across the designer sofa she'd bought with my money. Soon, very soon, she'd learn that karma doesn't care how pretty you are. The lottery commission is getting suspicious, Jonathan announced, spreading documents across his desk. 3 different people have called asking about irregularities with the ticket claim. I leaned forward. What kind of irregularities? Apparently, Bianca's story keeps changing. First, she said she bought the ticket at 2 p.m., then 4 p.m., then evening. She can't keep her lies straight. My phone lit up with a notification. Another Instagram post from Bianca, this time showing off her new sports car. Look at the comments. Jonathan pointed. People were starting to ask questions. Weird how you never showed the actual moment you bought the ticket. Didn't you say you bought it on 5th Street last week? Now it's Madison Ave? She's deleting them as fast as she can, I said. But Skylar showed me her admin panel. There are hundreds. Jonathan smiled. Time to add fuel to the fire. Remember that bodega owner I mentioned? The one near my apartment? He remembers you buying tickets every Friday. Same time, same numbers. He signed an affidavit this morning. My hands shook slightly. Will that be enough? Combined with everything else? It's a start, but we need Skylar on our side. As if on cue, my phone rang. Skylar's name flashed on the screen. Tiffany? She sounded panicked. Something's wrong. The lottery commission called again, and Bianca completely lost it. She's threatening to fire me if I don't delete all the questioning comments. Where are you? Outside her hotel. I can't keep doing this. The numbers don't add up, her stories keep changing, and after what she said at the party, meet me at the Blue Cup in 15 minutes. Jonathan raised an eyebrow as I grabbed my coat. Be careful. Always am. Skylar was already at the cafe when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin. I found something, she blurted before I could sit down. In her phone. What do you mean? She pulled out her tablet. Part of my job is backing up her photos. I found these from the day she claimed the ticket. My heart stopped. There, in crystal clear detail, were photos of Bianca following me into the bodega. Another showed her watching me check the ticket through my apartment window. She was stalking you, Skylar whispered. And there's more. Text messages to some security guard about deleting footage, messages to your mom about keeping you quiet. Skylar, I said carefully, I need to tell you something. I laid it all out. The truth about the ticket, Jonathan's plan, everything. By the end, she was pale but determined. I knew something was wrong, she said. The way she treats you, the inconsistencies. What do you need me to do? Keep documenting everything, and whatever you do, don't let her know you're helping me. Back at Jonathan's office, we reviewed Skylar's evidence. This is better than we hoped, he said, but timing is crucial. Too soon and she might find a way to spin it. Too late. And she might spend all my money, I finished. Exactly. We need one more piece, something public, something she can't deny. My phone buzzed. Mom. Family dinner tonight. Bianca's making a big announcement. I showed Jonathan the text. He grinned. Perfect. Wear that necklace I gave you. The one with the hidden microphone? Bianca's drunk confessions were good, but we need her sober. And nothing makes her slip up like family dinner. That evening, I arrived at my parents' house to find Bianca holding court in the living room. There she is, Bianca exclaimed. My favorite sister. Your only sister, I reminded her with a smile. Whatever. Guess what? I'm buying Mom and Dad a house. Mom clapped her hands. Isn't she generous? So generous, I agreed. Just like when we were kids, right, Bianca? Always taking what you wanted? Her smile flickered. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just remembering how you used to take my homework, my clothes, my boyfriends. I paused. My lottery ticket. Tiffany, Dad warned. But Bianca was already rising to the bait. You still can't let that go, can you? You're just jealous because I was smart enough to take what I wanted. The room went silent. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. What did you just say? Dad asked quietly. Bianca's face went white as she realized what she'd admitted. I didn't. I touched the necklace gently, making sure it was still recording. No, please, go on. Tell us exactly how smart you were. As Bianca stammered excuses, I caught a glimpse of my mother's face. Shocked, confused, and finally understanding dawning in her eyes. The trap was set. Now all we had to do was spring it. The silence at the dinner table was deafening. Mom's hands trembled as she set down her wine glass. Bianca, what exactly are you saying? Nothing. I'm not saying anything. Bianca's voice had that shrill edge I remembered from childhood, the one that appeared whenever she was caught in a lie. Tiffany's trying to twist my words. No one's twisting anything, I said calmly, touching my necklace again. You just said you were smart enough to take what you wanted. That's not what I meant. Dad cleared his throat. Then what did you mean, Princess? Bianca's mascara was starting to run. You're all ganging up on me, after everything I've offered to do for this family. With my money, I added softly. Prove it. She slammed her hands on the table. You can't prove anything. My phone buzzed. A text from Skylar. Check Instagram. Now. I pulled up the app. Someone had posted a video from Bianca's party, the one where she drunkenly bragged about paying off the security guard. The comments were exploding. OMG, did she just admit to stealing the ticket? This is wild. A lottery commission needs to see this. I knew something was off about her story. Bianca's phone must have buzzed too, because her face went from red to ghost white in seconds. Who? She whispered, staring at her screen. Who posted this? Posted what? Mom grabbed her own phone. Her gasp was audible. Bianca Marie, tell me this isn't true. It's not. I was drunk. People say stupid things when they're drunk. Like the truth? I suggested. Bianca lunged for her phone, frantically typing. Skylar, delete this now. Skylar! She can't, I said. It's already been shared thousands of times. You! Bianca's eyes narrowed. You planned this. You and that little social media rat. Dad stood up slowly. Bianca, did you steal your sister's lottery ticket? Daddy, please, answer the question. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in Bianca's eyes. I deserved it more. Tiffany would have wasted it on stupid things like charity and investments. I know how to make people happy. Mom started crying. How could you do this? How could I? Bianca laughed hysterically. The same way I've done everything else. The same way you've let me do everything else. Take Tiffany's college fund? Oh, Bianca needs it more. Ruin her job interviews? Well, she shouldn't compete with her sister. This is what you created. The truth hung in the air like poison gas. My parents looked stunned, as if seeing their golden child clearly for the first time. My phone buzzed again. Jonathan. Lottery Commission wants a meeting. Tomorrow morning. You know what the funny thing is? I stood up, gathering my purse. I would have shared it with you. If you just asked, I would have helped you start your business, buy a house, everything you wanted. But you had to take it all. Where are you going? Mom reached for me. We need to fix this. Fix what? The fact that you enabled her for 30 years? Or the fact that she committed fraud? Fraud? Bianca's voice cracked. What do you mean, fraud? I mean, the Lottery Commission has opened an investigation. They're meeting with my lawyer tomorrow morning. I headed for the door. Oh, and Bianca? You might want to stop spending money that isn't yours. I hear fraud charges get worse when the stolen money's gone. You can't do this to me. She scrambled after me. I'm your sister. I turned back one last time. You're right. You are my sister. And you're about to learn what that should have meant all along. As I walked to my car, I could hear Bianca's screams and Mom's sobs. Dad came running after me. Tiffany, wait! I paused, hand on my car door. I'm sorry, he said quietly. We should have seen it. Should have stopped it. Yes, you should have. What happens now? I looked back at the house where Bianca was having a full meltdown in the doorway. Now? Now she faces consequences. For once in her life. And us? That depends on what you do next. I got into my car. But I'd start by not buying that house she promised you. Something tells me she won't be able to afford it. As I drove away, my phone lit up with notifications. The video was going viral. Skylar had done her job perfectly. The truth was out there, and no amount of deletion could stop it now. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and investigations, but tonight I finally felt free. The Lottery Commission's office was all fluorescent lights and bureaucratic beige. Jonathan sat beside me, laying out documents while 3 commissioners studied them intently. So you have the bodega owner's statement? The head commissioner said. The phone recordings, social media posts, and now these photos from Ms. Powell? Yes, Jonathan replied. Plus the security footage from surrounding businesses showing my client entering the store and purchasing the ticket. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since morning. Bianca's meltdown video had reached millions of views. Lotterygate was trending. Miss? The commissioner looked at me. Why did you wait so long to come forward? Before I could answer, the door burst open. Bianca stormed in, followed by a harried-looking man in an expensive suit. This meeting is private. Jonathan stood up. Like hell it is. Bianca's makeup was smeared, her designer outfit wrinkled. You can't just steal my money. Your money? I laughed. That's rich even for you. My client, her lawyer interrupted, would like to propose a settlement. Jonathan smiled coldly. We're not interested in settlements. We're interested in justice. 50-50 split, Bianca blurted. Come on, Tiff, we're sisters. The commissioners watched this exchange like a tennis match. Sisters? I stood up. Let's talk about being sisters. Show them the footage, Jonathan. He pulled up a video on his tablet, security footage from a cafe across from my apartment. There was Bianca, clearly following me, watching through my window as I checked the lottery numbers. That proves nothing, she shrieked. Maybe not, I agreed. But this does. I played the recording from last night's dinner. Bianca's voice filled the room. I deserved it more. Her lawyer winced. Furthermore, Jonathan added, we have evidence of attempted bribery of a security guard, witness tampering, and fraudulent documentation submitted to this commission. Bianca's face crumpled. Daddy will fix this. He always fixes everything. Not this time. I showed her my phone. He and Mom are cooperating with the investigation. They've provided statements about your confession. They wouldn't dare. Check your messages. She grabbed her phone, scrolling frantically. Her face went from angry to desperate as she read. This isn't fair, she whispered. Everything was perfect. Ms. Norris, the head commissioner addressed Bianca. Based on the evidence presented, we're freezing all lottery payments pending investigation. Additionally, we'll be referring this case to the district attorney's office. You can't do that. I've already spent... How much? I interrupted. How much of my money did you burn through? Her lawyer touched her arm. Don't answer that. Almost all of it, she said anyway. The cars, the clothes, the parties. The room went silent. Millions of dollars gone in a month. Well, Jonathan smiled. That's going to make the fraud charges interesting. Bianca's lawyer pulled her toward the door. We need to discuss your options. Now. Wait. She turned back to me. Tiffany, please, you can stop this. Tell them you changed your mind. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. The designer clothes couldn't hide her desperation now. "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "All those years, I thought something was wrong with me. Why didn't my parents love me like they loved you? Why wasn't I good enough? But now I realize they did me a favor. They made me strong, independent, everything you're not." "I hate you," she spat. "No, you hate that you can't control me anymore." The commissioners cleared their throats. "If we're done with the family drama, we have some paperwork to process." As Bianca was led away by her lawyer, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from Skylar. "Check Twitter, now." The video from last night's dinner had gone viral. But it wasn't just the confession. Someone had compiled years of social media posts showing Bianca's pattern of taking what she wanted. Consequences be damned. "Your sister's going to need a very good lawyer," Jonathan commented. "She's not my sister anymore," I replied. "She's just someone who taught me a very expensive lesson about family." The head commissioner handed me a stack of forms. "Fill these out. Once verified, we can begin the process of rightful payment." As I started signing, I caught my reflection in the window. For the first time in years, I looked peaceful. Strong. Bianca had always said karma wasn't real. I smiled, thinking of her face when the commissioners mentioned the DA's office. Karma might not be real, but justice? Justice was just getting started. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. 3 months had passed since the lottery commission meeting, and today was Bianca's sentencing hearing. "Miss, any comment on your sister's plea deal?" A microphone thrust in my face. Jonathan steered me through the crowd. "My client has no comment at this time." Inside, the courtroom was packed. Mom and Dad sat in the back row, looking smaller somehow. They'd aged years in the past months, especially after the investigation revealed they'd unknowingly aided Bianca's schemes over the years. Destiny squeezed my hand as we sat down. "You okay?" Before I could answer, the bailiff called out, "All rise." Bianca was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of her usual designer clothes. Her hair was flat, her face bare of makeup. She wouldn't look at me. "Before we proceed with sentencing," the judge began, "would the defendant like to make a statement?" Bianca's lawyer nudged her. She stood slowly, hands shaking as she held a piece of paper. Her voice cracked. "I've had time to think in jail. About what I did. About who I am." She turned to face me. "I always thought I was protecting you, Tiffany. That's what Mom and Dad told me. Look after your little sister. But somewhere along the way, I started thinking that meant I owned you." The courtroom was silent. "I took your college fund because I convinced myself you didn't really want to go to law school. I sabotaged your job interviews because I couldn't stand the idea of you being more successful than me. And when I saw you buy that ticket," she wiped her eyes, "I watched you check the numbers, saw your face light up, and all I could think was, why her?" Mom was crying softly in the back. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Bianca continued. "I don't deserve it, but I am sorry. Not just for the ticket, but for everything. For being the worst kind of sister." The judge cleared his throat. Given the defendant's cooperation and guilty plea, this court sentences Bianca to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years probation. Additionally, she is ordered to make full restitution of all spent funds. The gavel struck. Bianca's shoulders slumped. As the bailiff let her out, she paused by my row. "The worst part?" she whispered. "You were right. If I'd just asked, you would have shared it." Then she was gone. Outside, Mom and Dad approached hesitantly. "Tiffany," Mom started, "we've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand how we failed, both of you." "We enabled her," Dad added. "Made excuses. We thought we were showing love, but we were just creating a monster. And destroying you in the process," Mom whispered. I looked at these broken people who'd shaped my childhood. "I'm not angry anymore," I realized. "I'm just done." "Will we—" Mom's voice shook. "Will we ever be a family again?" "I don't know. That depends on whether you're ready to see me as I am, not as Bianca's shadow. Jonathan appeared at my elbow. The press wants statements. Ready? I nodded, then turned back to my parents. I'm starting a foundation for siblings of narcissists, victims of financial abuse. You're welcome to get involved, but only if you're ready to acknowledge your part in all this. They nodded tearfully. The press conference was brief. I announced the foundation, spoke about family healing, and declined to comment on Bianca's sentence. But as I was leaving, one reporter called out, "What are you going to do with the remaining lottery money?" I smiled. Live my life. The right way. Later that evening, I sat with Destiny, Jonathan, and Skylar at our favorite bar. To justice, Jonathan raised his glass. To karma, Skylar added. To freedom, I said quietly. Destiny hugged me. You know what the best revenge is? Living well. My phone buzzed. A text from the prison. Bianca, I know you'll probably never read these, but I'm going to write anyway. Every day. Until maybe one day you'll understand how sorry I am. I showed it to Jonathan. Think she means it? He shrugged. People can change. The question is, do you want to be around to see if she does? I thought about the little girl who once idolized her big sister, about the woman who finally stood up for herself, about the person I was becoming. I don't know, I answered honestly. But for the first time in my life, that decision is completely mine. Skylar raised her glass again. To choices. As we clinked glasses, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not because of the money or even the justice served, but because finally, after all these years, I was free from Bianca's shadow. And that was worth more than any lottery ticket. The foundation's opening ceremony buzzed with energy. Cameras flashed as I cut the ribbon across the entrance of our new building, the Phoenix Center for Family Healing. And what inspired the name? A reporter asked. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to rise again, I answered, catching sight of Mom and Dad in the crowd. They'd been attending therapy religiously, learning to recognize their enabling behaviors. Inside, during the reception, Destiny nudged me. Look who's here. Skylar walked in, followed by a familiar figure in prison sweats, accompanied by a guard. My heart stopped. She got permission for a 4-hour release, Skylar explained quickly. To see what her actions helped create, Bianca looked different, smaller somehow. The prison uniform hung loose on her frame, and her face was free of its usual mask of makeup and superiority. This is amazing, Tiff, she said softly, gesturing at the center. All these people you're going to help. Want to see something? I led her to a wall of photos, survivors sharing their stories. Read that one. She stepped closer to a particular story. My sister took everything from me, but in losing it all, I found myself. That's our story, she whispered. One of many. Turns out we're not as unique as we thought. Jonathan appeared with a stack of papers. The last of the restitution paperwork. Once you're released, you'll start making payments. Bianca nodded. I've been taking business classes in prison, learning to do things the right way this time. Good, I said simply. I read all your letters, I added after a moment. Every single one. Her head snapped up. You never responded. I wasn't ready, but I read them. A commotion near the entrance drew our attention. Dad was having an intense conversation with Mom, who was dabbing at her eyes. They're trying, Bianca observed. Really trying. Yeah, they are. Do you think? She hesitated. Do you think we'll ever be okay? I looked around the center, at the people sharing stories, finding strength in their shared experiences. At my parents, learning to love without enabling. At Bianca, finally facing her own demons. I think we'll be different, I replied. Better maybe, but never the same. I can live with different, she said quietly. The guard signaled it was time to go. Bianca turned to leave, then stopped. That lottery ticket, it wasn't really about the money, was it? No, I smiled sadly. It was about power, control, the same things it was always about. And now? Now I have something better than money or power. I have peace. After she left, Destiny found me staring at the wall of stories. You okay? You know what's weird? I gestured at the photos. Every person here has a similar story. Family who took and took until there was nothing left. But look at them now. Strong, she agreed. Like you. Jonathan joined us, champagne in hand. To the Phoenix Center's first day. And many more, added Skylar, who'd become our social media director. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. We're heading out, too emotional, but we're proud of you. Both of you. I showed it to Destiny. Baby steps. Speaking of steps, Jonathan grinned. Wait until they hear about the satellite centers we're planning. One battle at a time, I laughed. Today we celebrate this victory. Looking around at my chosen family, Jonathan with his legal brilliance, Destiny with her unwavering support, Skylar with her tech-savvy loyalty, I felt something click into place. The money hadn't made me whole. The revenge hadn't healed me. What had transformed me was finally standing up and saying enough, finding my voice, my strength. A young woman approached me clutching a registration form. Is it really free? The counseling? Everything's free, I assured her. That's what the foundation is for. My sister, she started crying. She took everything. I hugged her gently. Then this is exactly where you need to be. As I helped her fill out the form, I caught my reflection in the window. I barely recognized the confident woman staring back at me. She looked nothing like the scared girl who'd bought a lottery ticket hoping to escape her sister's shadow. That ticket had changed everything, just not in the way I'd expected. Instead of buying freedom, it had forced me to fight for it, to earn it. And looking at all these survivors, these phoenixes rising from their own ashes, I knew I'd spent the money exactly right. Some things, after all, are worth more than gold.
In my hands, I hold a bouquet of roses freshly picked this morning. Dewdrops still cling to the elegant pink petals with their reddish hue. In the quiet before opening time, I weave between the flowers, carefully arranging each stem. A small wind chime sways, letting in a fresh breeze. Mom, we're running low on water, Lily calls softly from the back. My 8-year-old daughter always helps at the shop on her days off. It's Saturday. James, my husband, left early for work, but his expression was sterner than usual. He hadn't come home until late again last night. Thank you, Lily. Mommy will top it up later, I say, gently patting her head. Lily gives a small nod and silently returns to tending the flowers. She never smiles in front of her father anymore. She just keeps her head down, tension written across her face. Margaret, my mother-in-law, appears from the back of the shop. At 65, she lives with her son and daughter-in-law. Amy, the deliveries are ready, she says kindly. But there's something shadowy lurking in her eyes. We live in an upscale suburb of Boston. On the surface, we want for nothing. My husband earns over $800,000 a year as an executive at a major investment bank. Some weekends, we spend time at our Cape Cod vacation home. But lately, the atmosphere at home has grown heavy. Think you'll make it to church tomorrow? Margaret asks. Sunday service at the Episcopal Church had been our family routine. But my husband's words echo in my mind, don't meet with anyone. Well, we'll see how I'm feeling, I reply vaguely. Lily leans against my shoulder. June sunlight streams into the shop. While the flowers shine beautifully, shadows have fallen across our hearts. My husband has started flying into rages over trivial matters and has become oddly fixated on the family's movements. He's staying out later and later, and when he does come home, he won't speak to anyone. Amy, those men are back, Margaret's voice trembles. Men in black suits pass by the shop front. We'd seen them yesterday, and the day before. I stand protectively in front of my daughter. Lily's small hands clutch tightly at my clothes. In our flower-scented shop, we hold our breath, waiting for those shadows to pass. My little flower shop along the Charles River has a good reputation in the area. We handle arrangements for churches and funeral homes, and do wedding flowers too. Though it's not a large business, we've built up steady trust. But lately, those peaceful days have been threatened. Mommy. Lily looks up at me with worried eyes. I'm scared of Daddy. Her words squeeze my heart. Indeed, my husband has changed. There's no trace left of the gentleman he once was. Though his work at the investment bank should be going well, his eyes seem haunted by something, and he can't settle. Margaret has been pained watching her son's transformation. She fears him too. Sometimes she catches him desperately searching through the safe room late at night. Suspicious phone calls have become more frequent. Every day, I drive my daughter to and from her expensive private school. Along the way, I have to maintain a perfect facade. In this neighborhood full of education-conscious upper-class families, rumors spread like wildfire. So I desperately hide the growing darkness in our family. Shopping at Whole Foods Market, gatherings with friends, PTA meetings. On the surface, nothing has changed. But our hearts were being eaten away, bit by bit. The wind chime sways again. This time, it's a regular customer. I put on a smile and hand over a bouquet. The fragrance of flowers and my daughter's warmth keep my heart going. Late that night, the phone rings. At the sound of the bell breaking the late-night silence, I stiffen. Lately, no good news comes from late-night calls. I had dozed off on the living room sofa waiting for my husband to return. I pick up the receiver with trepidation. Mrs. Amy Wilson. This is Detective Johnson from the Boston Police Department. I'm sorry to inform you that your husband has been in a car accident. My hand holding the receiver trembles. The officer continues, he's being transported to Massachusetts General Hospital now. It was a single-vehicle accident on Charles Street. His consciousness is. The rest of the words sound distant and hazy. In my memory, I see my husband's stern expression from when he left the house this morning. We'll explain the details at the hospital. Please come as soon as you can. I hurry upstairs. Being careful not to make noise on the hallway carpet, I open Lily's door. In the dim light, my daughter is awake. As if she had sensed something, she sits on her bed, hugging her knees. Lily, Daddy's been taken to the hospital. Let's go together. She nods silently and gets up quickly. There's an unnatural calmness in her movements. As if she had been waiting for this moment. Downstairs, Margaret waits with concern. She must have woken up from the noise too. Wearing a thin robe, her face is pale. Mom, please watch the house. Yes, be careful, and Amy, whatever happens, stay strong. There seems to be some other meaning in Margaret's voice. Her eyes show a determination I've never seen before. The car runs along the midnight streets. Streaks of streetlights flow past the windows. Lily in the passenger seat remains silent. I notice her anxiously checking the rearview mirror whenever we stop at traffic lights. Massachusetts General Hospital's emergency ward is in chaos. Doctors and nurses in white coats hurry back and forth, ambulance sirens wail in the distance. We follow the guide down corridors filled with the smell of disinfectant. "Are you the Wilson family?" A young doctor approaches us. Though tired, there's tension in his expression. He's currently unconscious and in critical condition. He's suffered severe head trauma, and there may be internal injuries. We're preparing for emergency surgery. As I listen to the doctor's explanation, I grip my daughter's hand tightly. I feel Lily's fingertips trembling slightly. We wait in the long corridor outside the operating room. Under the fluorescent light's artificial glow, Lily grips my hand. Her small hand is unnaturally cold. A red lamp glows quietly on the wall, indicating surgery in progress. The clock hands move slowly. During this time, Lily never tries to let go of my hand. It's as if she's afraid of being separated from me. Just before dawn, the surgery finally ends. We've managed to save his life, but he hasn't regained consciousness yet. There were multiple fractures and internal injuries, but fortunately nothing fatal. We'll keep him in the ICU for observation for now. As I listen to the doctor's explanation, I feel Lily's grip on my hand growing stronger. At that moment, I thought I saw something flash across my daughter's expression. Not relief, something else. In the ICU room, only the regular beeping of life support equipment could be heard. The green waveform on the monitor sways quietly, a testament to my husband's life. He lies in bed, surrounded by tubes and wires. His usually intimidating expression is gone, and he just looks like he's sleeping, pale-faced. The bandages covering his head and medical equipment attached all over tell of the accident's severity. That's when it happened. Lily's body suddenly starts shaking. When I look at my daughter in surprise, large tears are overflowing from her eyes. Are they tears of fear, or some other emotion? With a trembling voice, Lily whispers in my ear. "Mommy, we have to run. Once Daddy wakes up, it'll be too late." Those words send a chill down my spine. In my daughter's eyes, I see a fear I've never witnessed before. As if something she'd been suppressing for so long had suddenly burst forth. Those weren't the eyes of a young girl. They held a heavy truth that couldn't be put into words. I couldn't hide my shock. The scene before me suddenly looked different. My husband's accident, the quiet of the hospital room, and above all, my daughter's abnormal fear. Everything seemed to hint at some larger mystery. Outside the window, dawn's light was slowly beginning to color the sky. "Lily." As I start to speak, footsteps from the nurse's station could be heard. Lily quickly presses herself against me as if hiding, still trembling. The gesture seems like a habitual response. Visiting hours are over. The nurse's gentle voice brings me back to reality. "Thank you. We'll be leaving now." As we leave the room, I take one last look at my husband. Surrounded by life support equipment, he looks like a different person. When did the gentle husband I once knew become such a terrifying presence? And my daughter's words keep echoing in my mind. We have to run. Once Daddy wakes up, it'll be too late. The weight of those words slowly sinks into my heart. Only our footsteps echo in the quiet ICU corridor. My daughter's hand still firmly grips mine. The hospital waiting room was quiet like morning mist. Under dim fluorescent lights, plastic chairs stand in sterile rows. A faint smell of disinfectant lingers. Hours have passed since the accident, and while my body complains of fatigue, my mind is filled with an strange tension. Lily curls up small beside me. Even as dawn breaks, my daughter's trembling hasn't completely subsided. Wrapped in a thin blanket, she looks like an injured bird. We decided to wait here until Margaret arrives. Lily, can you tell me? I speak gently. I thought perhaps now she could talk about the changes of these past few months. My daughter raises her face slightly, her gaze sweeping the area as if checking. That gesture shows ingrained vigilance. The waiting room is empty. The early morning hospital is still wrapped in silence. Daddy. Lily's voice trembles slightly. He was afraid we'd run away. My heart pounds at those words. In my daughter's eyes, I see an emotion I've never witnessed before, something like determination. He watched us every day. Said if we told anyone about the money, the whole family would disappear. Lily's confession continues like darkness suddenly bursting forth after being contained for so long. What she saw after coming home from school, her father's suspicious behavior, sounds in the night. And the many changes in him that she had secretly observed. Daddy's computer, always full of things like codes, Lily whispers. But I started to learn bit by bit. The meaning of the numbers too. To think an 8-year-old girl carried such a burden. My heart felt crushed. Just then, the waiting room door opens and Margaret enters. Her face is pale, wearing an expression of someone who's made a decision. She clutches an old leather bag. Amy, I need to tell you too. Margaret opens her heavy mouth. She says she noticed her son's changes about 6 months ago. His desperate searching through the safe room late at night. The numerous suspicious phone calls. His behavior like someone being pursued. At first I thought it was work stress, Margaret's voice trembles. But that day. It happened a month ago. Margaret, waking in the night, froze at the sound of her son's shouting from his study. From the leather bag, she takes out a photograph. She had secretly taken it of her son's study. Don't tell anyone. If you value your lives. Since that night, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. Security cameras increased, and family outings were strictly limited. All bank accounts were placed under my husband's control. Margaret had witnessed her son's descent into madness firsthand. The numbers on the computer screen, I understood too, Margaret says quietly. They were the amounts of assets taken, and of people who disappeared. But that's not all, Lily says in a thin voice. Her voice carries the fear she couldn't tell anyone until now. My daughter begins to tell of an incident one night. The night my husband's work associates came to the house. Hearing angry shouts and things breaking from the study, Lily fearfully went to look. Hidden in the dark hallway, she witnessed everything. They've been silenced. Next is. Her father's voice was heard. The evidence, another man's voice. All taken care of. Shadows on the wall formed ominous shapes. That's when Lily heard the decisive words. We don't spare witnesses. It was her father's cold voice. Like a completely different person. After that, I saw, Lily's voice trembles. On Daddy's computer screen. A photo of an elderly couple was displayed prominently. Next to it, the red text, handled. And a series of enormous numbers. Those people, they went missing, in the news. Margaret catches her breath. A chill runs down my spine. In my memory, fragmented events connect. My husband's behavior started changing after that big investment deal. Elderly couples promised enormous profits suddenly disappeared. And the small articles in the newspaper about missing persons cases. This photo too, Margaret pulls out another photo with trembling hands. My son was hiding it. It shows the smiling faces of several elderly couples. All people who had recently gone missing. Amy, Margaret takes my hand. We can't stay silent anymore. We must. Just then, footsteps are heard from the hallway. Lily stiffens. Margaret quickly returns the photos to her bag. A nurse approaches. There are visitors here to see you. Outside the waiting room stands a man in a black suit. Claiming to be my father's work associate, his eyes gleam coldly. The tall man's shadow stretches ominously down the misty hallway. Ma'am, I'm so sorry about this. Your husband and I are close colleagues. At his voice, Lily clutches my clothes tightly. The color drains from Margaret's face. The man continues, actually, there are some important company documents I'd like to ask about. In that moment, everything became clear. My husband's abnormal behavior, the investment fraud, and the disappeared people. We had learned a truth we were never supposed to know. My husband wasn't just a fraudster. He was involved in something far more terrifying. I'm sorry, I answer quietly but firmly. I'd like to spend this time just with family. The man shoots a sharp glance for a moment, but eventually leaves with an unnatural smile. I thought I saw something sinister in his retreating back. Back in the waiting room, none of us could speak for a long time. As morning light began streaming through the hospital windows, I had made my decision. I couldn't expose my daughter and Margaret to danger any longer. After repeatedly questioning myself, I reached this conclusion. Lily, Margaret, let's live on together. The moment I spoke those words, something that had weighed heavily for years seemed to lighten slightly. A faint look of relief appears on their faces. However, this was just the beginning. My husband's organization was powerful, and one wrong step could be irreversible. After leaving the hospital, we first visited a small law office on the opposite side of town. Across the Charles River, down an alley past old storefronts. The old brick building seemed to hide in the shadow of skyscrapers. My husband's associates shouldn't be able to reach us here. Jane Walker, a female lawyer I had contacted by phone earlier to explain the situation, was waiting for us. You've been through a lot, she said quietly. First, let's ensure your safety. In the antique-style reception room, we explained the detailed situation. The photos Margaret had prepared, the conversations Lily remembered. And the numerous suspicious incidents up until now. Lily sometimes spoke with a trembling voice, but with certain memory. She showed a composure unimaginable for an 8-year-old. "This is clearly coercion," Jane said with a serious expression. "And there's sufficient evidence of investment fraud." But she paused as if choosing her words. Light streaming through the window deepens the shadows on her face. "There's possibility of more serious crimes too. The missing persons cases should be under police investigation. Actually, there's already movement. We spent over 2 hours planning our future actions. First, preparing new identification documents. Considering application for the Witness Protection Program. And opening new bank accounts outside my husband's control. Lily's school transfer needed careful handling too. "I know a school principal," Jane said. "At a small private school in Maine. She'll understand the situation." "But the money." I voiced my concern. "My husband controlled all the flower shop's revenue." "It's all right," Margaret said quietly. "I have my retirement savings in a separate account. My son doesn't know about it." Her trembling hands take out a bank book. "This should last us for a while." Just then, Jane's cell phone rings. She answers and her expression changes. The air in the room instantly becomes tense. "The Crawfords are going to testify." Margaret and I exchange glances at that name. They were one of the elderly couples thought to be missing. They were the first major investors my husband had dealt with. They were taken into police protection 2 weeks ago. Apparently, they were being held at a facility in the Montana mountains. And now, they're prepared to testify about your husband's involvement. The room's atmosphere instantly fills with tension. Only the sound of an old fan breaks the silence. "But that means..." Margaret's voice trembles. "My son's associates." "Yes, things will change," Jane nods. "Their testimony will accelerate the investigation. The FBI will likely get involved. But at the same time, the danger increases," Lily says in a small voice. "Daddy's friends will become desperate." She was right. The Crawfords' appearance was a double-edged sword for us. While the police investigation would progress, it would also trigger my husband's organization into action. They would do anything to prevent new witnesses from coming forward. "It's a race against time," Jane stands up. "Let's hurry with preparations. I have a friend who works at a domestic violence hotline. Let's ask for her cooperation." That afternoon, we decided to move separately. Margaret to the bank, to transfer deposits and open new accounts. Me to arrange new accommodation. I needed to contact a real estate agent in Kennebunkport. And Lily to discuss school transfer with a trusted teacher. "Be careful," we said to each other. Moving separately through the city was dangerous, but we were racing against time. In the evening, I received a call from the hospital. "Ma'am, your husband's condition has stabilized. He may regain consciousness tomorrow. If possible." My hand holding the receiver trembled slightly. No time. We had to complete all preparations before he wakes up. Driving through the night city, I organized my thoughts. In these few hours, Shocking facts had come to light one after another. Jane's investigation revealed horrifying truths. The number of victims exceeded 100. People who lost all their retirement assets. Elderly people who had their pension funds taken under the guise of investments. And then the threats, confinement, and, for evidence elimination. Just thinking about it sends chills down my spine. There are still people who haven't been found, Jane's words keep repeating in my head. When I returned to the hospital, visiting hours were almost over. Those men in black suits were in the hallway again. They smiled eerily when they saw me. In the ICU ward, I saw my husband for the last time. Surrounded by tubes, his condition was stable, and they said he would soon regain consciousness. The sleeping face of the man I once loved now looked like a stranger. "Let's go." Lily's voice came from behind. When I turned around, my daughter was looking at me with strong eyes. That fearful expression was gone. Her eyes now shone with determination for a new future. "Yes," I nodded. "We're not coming back." As we left the hospital, a full moon shone in the sky. In the car heading to the hotel where Margaret waited, Lily showed a peaceful sleeping face for the first time in a long while. Moonlight through the car window gently illuminated her cheek. With tomorrow's dawn, we begin a new life. A new flower shop in a small coastal town in Maine. There, we'll reclaim our peaceful days. A life surrounded by the sound of waves and the fragrance of flowers. I gripped the steering wheel with determination. Under the moonlight, the car continued north. Behind us lay our past. And ahead, though uncertain, spread a future full of hope. A year has passed since then. My new flower shop stands on a small street in Kennebunkport, Maine. It's a modest shop with white walls and a blue door. The name Lily's Flowers was my daughter's idea. In the morning mist, I water the potted plants in front of the shop. The sound of waves carries on the sea breeze. "Mom, I'm ready," Lily calls from inside the shop. My daughter, now 9, has completely regained her bright expression. She's made many friends at her new school. On weekends, she invites friends over to bake cookies together. Every time I see my daughter smile, I'm convinced that decision was right. "Amy, today's deliveries are ready." Margaret appears carrying bouquets. She too is spending peaceful days. She participates in local volunteer activities and is active in the church reading group. Sometimes she gets lost in thought about her son, but that's becoming less frequent. Our new life is gradually taking shape. The shop is loved by the community and popular with tourists. Our flowers add color to Main Street with its antique shops. But the past hasn't completely disappeared. Sometimes the topic appears on TV news. Headlines reading, "Major investment fraud case, new developments." As the full scope of the case came to light, its scale exceeded imagination. Victims numbered over 100, with total damages reaching tens of millions of dollars. Elderly people who lost their retirement funds. Families robbed of their dreams. And those who never returned. My husband, no, ex-husband now, was arrested soon after regaining consciousness. FBI investigation led to his indictment as the mastermind of the investment fraud and suspect in multiple attempted murders. At the trial, witnesses appeared one after another. Starting with the Crawfords, survivors came forward courageously to testify. Margaret and I also submitted written testimony. Lily was exempted from testifying as she had already started a new life in a safe place. The sentence was 25 years in prison. He'll spend most of his life behind bars. Other organization members were arrested one after another. The men in black suits appeared on news being handcuffed. Each time, I felt chills run down my spine. Their evil hands had nearly reached us. Newspapers and TV reported this case as the investment fraud of the century targeting the elderly. But that was just the surface. Behind it lay a more horrific story. Threats, assault, and, for evidence elimination. The prosecutor's words still ring in my ears. But now, a new morning is beginning. Children pass by the shop on their way to school. Lily too walks to school, chatting happily with her new friends. They've made plans to go to the beach together this weekend. Margaret has started volunteering at a local senior center. She's also quietly involved in support activities for investment fraud victims. Her kindness gradually heals the hearts of wounded people. I participate in activities with the Victims' Families Association. At monthly gatherings, we talk with people who've had similar experiences. There are people there who have overcome grief and started new lives. Mom, look. Lily points to a flower blooming in front of the shop. A pure white lily shines in the morning sun. Beautiful, I smile. Flowers change with the seasons. But their beauty remains constant. We too will live through new seasons the same way. Mommy, I'm happy today too. Lily says this and hugs me. Her words warm my heart. We certainly lost important things. But we managed to protect even more important things. Our family bonds and a future full of hope. The wind chime sounds in the shop. A new day was about to begin. Mark and I always begin our mornings the same way. While I'm preparing breakfast in the kitchen, my husband embraces me from behind. Good morning, honey, his warm voice whispers in my ear. I instinctively close my eyes. The sense of security I feel in Mark's arms. The gentle scent of soap. A morning just like any other. Yet each of these ordinary moments is precious to me. Through the windows of our home in Greenwich's upscale neighborhood, the fresh early summer sunlight streams in. A quiet Sunday morning. The faint sound of church bells can be heard from the neighborhood. At this hour on a holiday, our neighbors are probably still deep in sleep. As I retie the strings of my white apron, I take eggs from the refrigerator. I know Mark's preferences perfectly. Poached eggs with a runny yolk, served with freshly toasted English muffins. Accompanied by a salad of fresh organic vegetables from Whole Foods. What's for brunch today? Mark asks while switching on the coffee maker. Mom's special blueberry muffins. She said she'd bake them this morning. We always have this kind of conversation on weekend mornings. Mark's mother Elizabeth was a kind woman who doted on her son. A retired nurse whose elegant white hair suited her well. She always wore pastel-colored clothes and made tending to her garden roses her daily routine. Inviting us for Sunday brunch every week was, I believe, her way of expressing motherly love. Everything happens for a reason. That's my favorite saying. Yes, everything happens for a reason. Meeting Mark must have been destiny too. 2 years ago, when I first saw him at a mutual friend's garden party, my heart moved quietly but surely. Tall and dressed in a white linen shirt, he was like a perfect gentleman straight out of a romantic movie. As a manager at J.P. Morgan, he had a gentle and thoughtful personality. On our first date in Manhattan, I fell in love with his slightly shy smile. I still vividly remember the day he proposed to me during a picnic in Central Park. In the soft light of dusk, more beautiful than the diamond's sparkle was the love reflected in his eyes. And the joy when we chose this house in Greenwich together. White walls, green lawn, roses blooming in the garden. Every day felt like a dream. Elizabeth's house is a large traditional colonial mansion. Opening the heavy wooden front door always envelopes us in warm air. Family photos adorn the mantelpiece, where Mark's childhood smile still watches over me warmly. In the living room furnished with antique pieces, we often spend peaceful Sunday afternoons over tea. My mother-in-law teaches me gardening. We planted this rose when Mark was 5, she reminisces nostalgically, and watching her profile, I secretly imagine if someday I too will be able to share such memories with my own child. Learning how to care for roses and spending peaceful time together had become our Sunday pleasure. Every morning, I check the pearl necklace at my throat. A precious treasure Mark gave me on our wedding day. It seemed to symbolize our happy marriage. And this morning, I had gained a certainty. In the spotless bathroom with its gleaming marble counter, I stared at the pregnancy test with trembling hands. Positive. My reflection in the mirror breaks into a radiant smile. Could there be any greater happiness? The crystallization of Mark's and my love. The beating of a new life. Everything was perfect. Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Our car was heading down the familiar road to his mother's house. Greenwich's street trees gently filtered the early summer sunlight. From the passenger seat, I kept stealing glances at Mark's profile. There seemed to be something shadowing his refined profile today. But perhaps that was just my imagination. Do you think Mom will be happy? I kept repeating the same question in the car. I'm sure she will, I continued, as if convincing myself. After all, we've been married for 2 years. Mom's been saying she wants to see her grandchild. Mark tightened his grip on the steering wheel slightly, his expression stiffening. Yes, of course. His voice rang hollow. But I didn't notice. Happiness had filled my heart so completely that it masked even the slightest sense of something being wrong. The car entered the quiet residential area. Amid the familiar scenery, I was thinking about the baby. There's a lovely park around here. I'm looking forward to taking walks with the child. The thought warmed my heart. Elizabeth's house came into view. The well-maintained front garden was abloom with colorful roses. The white roses planted beside the entrance were particularly stunning. Just last week, my mother-in-law had taught me how to care for them. The large White House showed its warm presence as if welcoming us. Opening the front door, the scent of blueberry muffins wafted through the air. Elizabeth's homemade treats always soothed my heart. Today was supposed to be a special celebration. I believed she would surely be delighted to hear the baby news. Entering the living room, Elizabeth sat on the antique sofa wearing an elegant floral dress. Her white hair seemed to shine more softly than usual. The table was set with the usual silver cutlery and Wedgwood tea set. Sunlight streaming through the windows reflected off the polished silver, making tiny particles of light dance around the room. "Welcome, Linda." Elizabeth stood up and embraced me gently. There was the usual warmth in it. A faint scent of lavender tickled my nose. Mark seemed somewhat restless, pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace. His footsteps echoed unnaturally in the quiet room. "Would you like something to drink?" Elizabeth asked while pouring tea. The amber liquid of the tea poured into the cup in an elegant curve. "Thank you." Mom, actually, I have wonderful news." I instinctively glanced at Mark. He nodded stiffly. At that moment, I thought I saw his hands trembling slightly. "What is it, Linda?" Elizabeth's voice held its usual warmth. Taking a deep breath, I wove together the precious words. "I'm pregnant. We're having a baby." A moment of silence fell. Elizabeth's teacup slowly slipped from her hands. A dry clinking sound echoed, and tea began staining the white carpet. Like an omen of the tragedy to come. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. Her hands began to shake. "Don't have it." My smile froze. My heart pounded violently. "What?" Elizabeth suddenly stood up, her voice trembling. She looked like a different person, unlike anyone I'd ever seen before. "Please, don't have this child." "Mother!" Mark cried out in panic. His voice mixed with fear and urgency. At that moment, everything began to go wrong. Elizabeth's trembling hands knocked the tableware onto the floor one after another. Broken cup fragments made tragic patterns on the white carpet. A silver spoon rolled across the floor, hitting the wall with a dull sound. In the frozen atmosphere, Mark's panicked expression stood out. He tried to rush to his mother but seemed to stumble. His gesture seemed to hide some emotion beyond mere surprise. My mind went blank. I couldn't understand. I didn't want to understand. Was this a dream? But what was happening before my eyes was all too vivid reality. Outside the window, birds were singing. That casual sound made this abnormal situation even more stark. Elizabeth kept repeating the same words through her tears. Her appearance was unimaginable from her usually elegant and dignified self. "You must not have it, you must not have it." Mark was desperately trying to calm his mother. But his hands were shaking too. And whether that trembling was from fear or guilt, I couldn't tell. I had a feeling that behind my mother-in-law's abnormal reaction lay some grave secret. But at that time, I had neither the courage nor the composure to solve that mystery. The drive home was enveloped in heavy silence. Outside was growing dim. Street lights were coming on one after another. What was that all about? My voice was so small I could barely hear it myself. My hand unconsciously reached for the pearl necklace at my throat. Mark gripped the steering wheel tightly, answering nervously. I could tell he was pretending to concentrate on driving. Mother's been a bit neurotic lately. Even so, I couldn't continue. Mark fell silent too. Outside the car window, the twilight townscape flowed quietly by. A happy family advertisement was displayed in a luxury boutique's show window. But the beauty of the world I had seen until just now was nowhere to be found. That night, I couldn't sleep. Next to me, Mark was breathing more deeply than usual. But was it really peaceful sleep? To me, it seemed like he might be pretending to sleep. Morning of my second month of pregnancy. From behind me as I stood in the kitchen, Mark approached. Lately, his footsteps seemed strangely nervous to my ears. While birds sang their morning song outside the window, only this house seemed wrapped in an eerily unnatural quiet. "Drink this." What Mark held out was a mug containing an unfamiliar brown liquid. The floral pattern painted on the white porcelain seemed strangely ominous, unlike before. Mother said it's good herbal tea for pregnant women. I hesitantly accepted the mug. There was something off about the sweet, lukewarm scent that reached my nose. But that might just be due to changes in my condition from pregnancy. I've become sensitive to smells lately. Thank you. The moment I took a sip, a strange sensation spread through my chest. It was definitely not pleasant. A burning sensation in my throat, and a feeling like my stomach was freezing. From that day, my condition began to change dramatically. I was hit with abnormal drowsiness, and uncontrollable dizziness and nausea. My appetite completely disappeared. This was clearly different from normal morning sickness. I would wake up to severe abdominal pain in the morning and be plagued by unexplained fevers at night. "Are you okay? You don't look well." Mark looked at me with a worried face. But I felt like some other emotion lurked behind those eyes. Relief? Expectation? Or guilt? Unreadable emotions swirled in the depths of his eyes. In the doctor's examination room. In the sterile space with its scent of disinfectant, I waited for the examination results with trembling hands. The wall clock's second hand ticked abnormally loud. The test results looked normal. The doctor's words, spoken with a gentle smile, didn't ease my anxiety at all. Rather, those words seemed disconnected from reality. But this nausea. The words trailed off. I didn't know how to explain. My head was fuzzy, and I couldn't think straight. Pregnancy symptoms vary by individual. But if you're worried, let's do another checkup next week. The doctor's words seemed to come from far away. As I left the examination room, Mark's expression, sitting in the waiting room chair, seemed to distort for a moment. At night, Mark spent more and more time at his computer. The blue-white light cast eerie shadows on his face. When I approached, he would hurriedly close windows. Such gestures increased day by day. Around 2 a.m. when the living room clock struck, he would always go to his computer. The sound of typing keys and occasional deep sighs. It was like the sound of someone being chased and bound by something. One day, while putting away laundry, an unfamiliar bankbook fell from the inside pocket of Mark's suit. Opening it, I found records of huge withdrawals I knew nothing about. My heart began racing. On the back of the bankbook was the name of an unknown facility. And the same amount was being withdrawn every month. And then, the suddenly increased business trips. Longer phone calls than usual. Late-night emails. Everything was unnatural, everything stirred up anxiety. My heart grew heavier day by day. Since that day at brunch, both my mother-in-law and Mark's behavior had clearly changed. Weekend brunches were cancelled with the excuse of feeling unwell, replaced by increasing late-night phone calls. When I woke in the middle of the night, Mark was gone. Small voices leaked from the living room. Elizabeth's voice over the receiver. "There's still time. Think about that child. Don't add to your sins." I began to gradually understand the meaning of these fragmentary words I heard. But I didn't want to understand. Part of me wanted to turn away from this reality. Anxiety and loneliness enveloped me. Outside the window, rain had begun to fall. That sound drew me deeper into darkness. Even lying in bed, I couldn't sleep from nausea and anxiety. My pillow grew wet with tears. Elizabeth's phone calls grew more persistent day by day. "There's still time, Linda. Think about the child. I've already decided. I'm having this baby." My hand trembled as I placed the receiver down. The pearl necklace at my throat touched my skin coldly. Time watching movies as a couple, cooking dinner together, weekend shopping trips, all became things of the past. Replacing them were Mark's deep sighs, my mother-in-law's anxious phone calls, and my uncontrollable nausea. One night, waking to severe abdominal pain, I went to the kitchen for water. There I saw the herbal tea box thrown in the garbage. In small letters was written a warning. "Avoid use if pregnant or possibly pregnant." At that moment, all the unsettling feelings connected. The dark premonition grew stronger day by day. But the life growing surely inside me. Protecting this child was now my only mission. The contractions began at midnight. Outside was pitch-black darkness. A wheelchair moved quietly down the white corridors of Greenwich General Hospital. Mark pushed the wheelchair at an unnecessarily quick pace, sweat beading on his forehead. I could feel his hands trembling through the back of the chair. The hallway fluorescent lights cast our shadows on the wall. Two distorted shadows. They seemed to presage our distorting fate. Reaching the delivery room, nurses efficiently began preparations. People in white coats bustled about, monitor warning sounds rang out. The smell of disinfectant was oddly strong. The white ceiling lights felt somehow cold. "You'll be fine. Just regulate your breathing," Dr. Johnson's voice rang out. He was a mild-mannered middle-aged doctor. White mixed in his hair, gentle eyes. But even his voice seemed to contain some tension. As if he sensed something. Between contractions. During the lulls between waves of pain, I observed Mark. He was unusually restless. Repeatedly checking his smartphone, sighing, and sometimes showing expressions of deep guilt. That figure had completely lost the image of the ideal husband he once was. A nurse attached heart rate sensors to my body. The monitor displayed 2 heartbeats, mother and fetus. That sound strangely constricted my heart. Did you call your mother? At my question, Mark's body stiffened for a moment. The veins in his neck stood out visibly. She's on her way now. His voice had a tremor I'd never heard before. The clock hands slowly pointed to midnight. The intervals between contractions shortened, the pain intensified. Mark's face grew increasingly pale. He stared out the window, sighing deeply many times. At that moment, Elizabeth burst into the hospital room. Her usual elegant appearance was disheveled, her hair in disarray. "Linda!" That cry had a painful resonance. As if she had foreseen all the events about to unfold. Mark tried to stop her, but Elizabeth shook off her son's arm. In her eyes floated the weight of a long-held secret. "We can't keep hiding it anymore." The next moment, intense pain struck me. Sweat rolled down my forehead as I gripped the sheets tightly. "I can see the baby. Just a little more." The doctor's voice, machine sounds, Elizabeth's crying, Mark's panicked voice. As everything mixed together in a whirlpool, I pushed with all my might. The pearl necklace at my throat touched my skin coldly. It seemed like the final symbol of a happy marriage about to crumble. A small cry rang out. At that moment, the air in the hospital room froze. Dr. Johnson stood motionless, staring at the baby. His expression showed years of professional calm crumbling in an instant. "Doctor?" The nurse's voice rang out anxiously. The movement of surrounding staff stopped. The doctor's expression changed completely. It was an expression I had never seen before, mixing anger and sadness. "Police! Call the police immediately." Those words rang through the white hospital room like a bomb. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to flash blindingly for a moment. "Stop!" Mark shouted. His voice was so distraught it was unrecognizable as that of the once composed investment bank manager. "Please, listen. There's a reason for this." But it was too late. Minutes later, the hospital room was filled with the sound of police sirens. Footsteps running down the hallway. Then uniformed officers entered the room one after another. Their footsteps seemed to beat the same rhythm as Mark's heartbeat. "Mr. Mark Wilson." The officer's voice rang cold. His eyes held the certainty built from years of duty. At that moment, Elizabeth took my hand. With tears distorting her face, she began to speak. Her hand was cold and trembling. 10 years ago, Mark had another child. Severely disabled, in a facility. Her words broke off. The pain of revealing a long-hidden secret seeped through her voice. The room was wrapped in heavy silence. Only the monitor sound continued marking time mercilessly. Massive treatment costs were needed. Elizabeth's voice trembled. In her eyes mixed unconditional love for her son and the anguish that came with that love. But insurance wouldn't cover it, the facility fees were enormous. Mark was aiming for a promotion. But if they knew he was the father of a disabled child? All the mysteries connected at once. The herbal tea. Frequent late-night phone calls. The hidden bank book. And my mother-in-law's abnormal reaction that day. The truth was too cruel. You tried to induce a miscarriage. My voice was surprisingly calm. Perhaps it was an emotion beyond anger, a kind of enlightenment. Mark fell to his knees as if collapsing while being handcuffed by the police. The figure of the once dignified investment bank manager was no longer there. I just wanted. Words that couldn't become words vanished emptily. On his back was the heavy cross of 10 years. The baby was immediately taken to intensive care. The doctor said it was to check the effects of long-term drug administration. The tiny life sleeps surrounded by IVs and monitors. In that small sleeping face showed both anxiety for the future and the strength to live despite it all. Elizabeth was sobbing on a bench in the hallway. "Forgive me. I knew, but couldn't stop it." Her figure seemed about to be crushed under an unbearable weight as a mother and as a human being. Through the white hospital room window, dawn light began to stream in. Now that all truth had been revealed, we were about to meet a new morning. The pale light, somewhat ironically, illuminated the room like a symbol of hope. But this wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a new battle. For the baby. And for myself. A year has passed since then. In a hospital room, I hold a small life in my arms. My daughter's life began surrounded by IVs and monitors. Due to the effects of the drugs, her growth faced many difficulties. But her strength to live desperately was second to none. "Linda, today's test results are very good." The attending physician smiles kindly. "She's been in charge of my daughter since admission." "Thank you." I put heartfelt gratitude into those words. From the hospital school classroom, children's laughter can be heard. My daughter's rehabilitation continues. But her smile grows brighter day by day. "Good morning, Ray." A nurse calls out. Ray. A name I gave meaning, ray of hope. My daughter responds by waving her small hand. That gesture naturally brings smiles to those around her. Mark's trial had already ended. The crime of injury through drug administration. A 5-year prison sentence. In court, all he could do was cry. But an unexpected turning point came right after that. Before being transferred to prison, Mark said he wanted to see me. The figure I saw in the visiting room was no longer the shadow of the once dignified investment bank manager, but just a father regretting his sins. I went to the facility. Mark's voice trembled. I couldn't visit even once, when that child turned 10. But I finally met him. When our eyes met, I understood the foolishness of myself who had been running away. When I heard that story, something moved within me. The following week, I visited that facility with a heavy resolve. A quiet building surrounded by greenery. There, I met Mark's first child for the first time. James. The boy in the wheelchair had gentle eyes like Mark's. When I approached, he showed me his biggest smile. At that moment, everything changed. Now, we are building a new form of family. After Ray is discharged, we plan to leave Greenwich and move near James's facility. To begin a new life with both children. My relationship with Elizabeth has also gradually changed. She now works as a volunteer at the facility. While utilizing her experience as a former nurse, she spends her days in atonement. Every Sunday, she comes to see James. And sometimes she comes to check on Ray too. If only I had told the truth back then. Elizabeth often murmurs. But everyone has regrets. What's important is how we live from here on. That's what I've learned. The other day, while thinking about motherhood, I met a mother in the facility hallway. She who was desperately raising a child with severe disabilities said this. There's no such thing as a perfect life. But in an imperfect life, there is sure love. Those words sank deep into my heart. This morning, I gazed at the pearl necklace at my throat in the mirror for the first time in a while. What was once a symbol of happiness now holds a different meaning. It is proof of the futility of pretending to be perfect and the courage to move forward while carrying wounds. Outside the window, spring winds are blowing. Holding Ray's hand, I think. Life doesn't go as planned. But if you have the courage to face the truth, a path will surely open. My story continues on. Together with my 2 children, finding new hope. Yes, everything happens for a reason. I believe that even this trial surely had meaning. In the kitchen filled with soft spring sunlight, Rebecca was hurriedly preparing breakfast. Her computer screen still displayed the design project with its looming deadline, and she kept stealing glances at it. Just as the toaster popped up with freshly made bread, the sound of quick footsteps came from upstairs. "Mom, are you busy again today?" April came running down the stairs. As Rebecca turned toward that cheerful voice, she noticed the ribbon on her daughter's uniform was slightly crooked. She couldn't help but smile as she reached for her daughter's collar. "Hold on, your ribbon is crooked. I can do it myself." April protested, though she didn't push away her mother's hands. "There, all done. Today's breakfast is toast with blueberry jam." As they sat down at the table, April reached for the toast while glancing at a photograph on the wall. It showed Grandma Catherine baking cookies with April, their faces covered in flour as they laughed together. "Mom, can we never eat Grandma's cookies again?" Rebecca's hands froze for a moment. The loneliness in her daughter's eyes made her heart ache. "April." While searching for a response, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, Victoria was standing there. Her mother-in-law, perfectly put together as always, looked Rebecca up and down in her house clothes. My goodness, Rebecca. Still in your pajamas. It's already 9 o'clock. Good morning, Mother. I have work due today. Nevertheless, this house is terribly unkempt, Victoria sighed through her nose as she peered into the living room from the entrance. To think my son has to live in such conditions. Rebecca silently let her mother-in-law in and led her to the kitchen. April hurriedly called out, "I'm going to school," and dashed out with her backpack. That evening, Rebecca sat alone again in front of a cold dinner. The clock already showed 9 o'clock. As usual, she had received a message from her husband James saying he would be working late. Rain had started falling outside. As she watched the droplets falling steadily, Rebecca remembered her last conversation with her mother. It had been raining that day too. "I'm going for a quick drive." Her mother had left with those words and never returned. Rebecca opened the gallery on her smartphone. There were many photos stored there of memories with her mother. April's sports day. Christmas dinner. Gardening in the backyard. Her mother's gentle smile appeared in every photo. Suddenly, she heard the front door opening. She hurried to stand up as James came home, looking exhausted. "I'm home. Welcome back. Your mother came by today." Her husband cut her off with an irritated tone. "I heard from Mom. Don't you think you should take better care of the house?" Rebecca silently hung her head. The old James would have responded differently. When had their conversations become like this? When she entered the bedroom, April was already asleep. Her grandmother's photo sat by her pillow. Rebecca gently stroked her daughter's hair. "Good night, April." Outside the window, the rain continued to fall. Tomorrow would bring another new day. Rebecca sighed deeply as she headed to her work desk. Just a few hours until the deadline. As she faced the screen, she remembered her mother's words. "You're a strong girl, Rebecca. You can always keep moving forward, no matter what." With her mother's words in her heart, she had to keep moving forward today too. Even if she carried an unending loneliness inside. In the bedroom filled with morning mist, Rebecca woke up. The sunlight filtering through the light purple curtains brought spring warmth into the room. Glancing at the calendar, she noticed a red circle. She had completely forgotten it was her own birthday. Her first birthday without her mother. Just as that thought made her chest tighten again. "Mom, happy birthday." The door burst open and April came rushing in. In her pink pajamas, she clutched a card decorated with colorful crayons. Though her hair was slightly messy from sleep, her smile shone like the morning sun. "I drew it myself. It's you and Grandma and me. I also drew blue birds in the sky. They were Grandma's favorite." The card showed 3 smiling faces. Figures holding hands under the blue sky. Seeing her mother's image, Rebecca felt her throat tighten with emotion. But she had to show a smile for her daughter. "Thank you, April. It's a beautiful drawing. I'll treasure it always." Rebecca hugged her daughter. The sweet scent of shampoo warmed her heart. After finishing breakfast preparations and seeing April off, Rebecca checked the mailbox. A task she usually put off, but today she had a special feeling. Among the stack of bills and advertisements, there was one envelope. A light cream-colored envelope. The sender field was blank. But the moment she saw the handwriting on the address, Rebecca's heart leaped. She caught her breath at the familiar handwriting. It felt as if time had stopped. The sound of the wind, passing cars, everything seemed to fade away. Her hands began to shake. This can't be. Her mother's handwriting. There was no mistaking those uniquely rounded letters. The same handwriting that had carefully filled out library cards at the elementary school, one book at a time. Rebecca clutched the envelope to her chest and hurried back inside. Stay calm. Though she told herself this, her heart continued to beat wildly. She sat on the living room sofa and took a deep breath. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. A card slipped out, written in black ink on pale blue paper. It must have been written with her mother's favorite fountain pen, that distinctive ink color. My dear Rebecca. Happy birthday. I've been waiting for so long. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But there was more. The letters were slightly smeared. Had her mother been crying while writing too? I want to see you. But we must be careful. Please come without telling anyone. Then there was an unfamiliar address. In the direction of Cape Cod. An old seaside town. Near the place her mother had once said she wanted to live after retiring. Rebecca stood up and looked out the window. The same streetscape as always. Someone was tending their garden next door. Children rode by on bicycles. Everything was the same as before, yet the world felt completely transformed. She picked up her phone. Her finger paused as she was about to call her husband. The words from the card flashed through her mind. Don't tell anyone. Those words seemed to hide something urgent. She quickly packed necessary items into her bag. Wallet, phone, and her mother's card. Passing through the hallway toward the entrance, her eyes caught the photo of her mother on the wall. A year since the accident. All this time, she had been talking to her mother in this photo. Yet now, her mother was alive. That fact still didn't feel real. Her hand shook again as she called a taxi. When she told the driver the address, he said, "That's quite far." But distance didn't matter now. The taxi headed north on the highway. The scenery outside the window flowed past like a movie. Why, Mother? Why for a whole year? Questions kept arising. But an even stronger emotion filled her chest. She could see her mother. Her mother was alive. That joy overwhelmed all questions. The scenery outside the car window gradually changed. From upscale residential areas to neighborhoods lined with old apartment buildings. The smell of the sea grew stronger. A lighthouse could be seen in the distance. The kind of scenery her mother loved. We're here. She got out in front of an old 3-story apartment building. The brown brick walls were peeling in places, but well-tended potted plants lined the windows. Geraniums, her mother's favorite. Their red flowers bloomed like guideposts. Her feet felt like lead as she climbed the stairs. One step, then another. Second floor. Third floor. Rebecca stopped in front of the designated room. A plate reading 3F hung on the door. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. The sound echoed through the quiet hallway. Sweat dampened her hand clutching the card. Her heartbeat rang loudly in her ears. The sound of a key turning. Slowly, very slowly, the door opened. And there was her mother. The same gentle eyes as a year ago. Though she had lost some weight and had more white in her hair, it was unmistakably her mother. That warm smile. That embracing gaze. Everything was exactly as Rebecca remembered. "Mom, is it really you?" Her voice trembled. Her vision blurred with tears. She took one step forward and found herself in her mother's arms. The familiar scent of soap. Warm body temperature. Gentle hands rubbing her back. Everything felt real, seeping into Rebecca's senses. The two embraced wordlessly, crying. The sunlight leaking into the hallway seemed to bless their miraculous reunion, enveloping them. A moment that felt like eternity, frozen in time. Mother and daughter simply held each other, confirming each other's existence. Her mother's room was small but kept clean. A wicker chair sat by the window, with her favorite houseplant basking in the sun beside it. Familiar embroidery decorated the walls, and a half-finished piece of lace knitting lay on the table. Everything about the space was quintessentially her mother. "Sit down. I'll make some tea." Her mother's voice carried the same gentleness as a year ago. Familiar sounds came from the kitchen. The sound of water being poured into the kettle. Cups being taken out. And then the aroma of her mother's favorite Earl Grey wafted over. "How is April?" "She's fine. But she really misses you." The words caught in her throat. Her mother quietly set the cups on the table and sat across from Rebecca. Her hands trembled slightly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her mother's voice shook. Rebecca instinctively reached out and grasped her mother's hands. They were cold, but there was definite warmth. Why did you pretend to be dead?" "That accident." Her mother heaved a deep sigh and slowly began to speak. "That day, I was almost killed on a mountain road in New Hampshire." Rebecca's hands tensed. Her mother continued. "Victoria invited me. She said we could take beautiful photos at the mountain lookout. Let's go together. James was there too. They knew I had an inheritance." Her mother stood up and took an envelope from an old cabinet. Inside were a recording device and cassette tape. And one medical report. "This is the evidence. Before heading to the lookout, I recorded their conversation. Victoria had been trying to kill me for a while. Even trying to poison my tea. Look at this medical report." The report showed traces of arsenic had been detected. The date was 2 weeks before the accident. "But why didn't you go to the police?" "Because she has power, doesn't she? A prominent figure in the community, a pillar of the church. No one would believe me. And..." Her mother's face clouded over. "You and April might have been harmed." Rebecca stared at her mother in bewilderment. The reality before her was too cruel to accept. Then, that accident. At the lookout, they said they wanted to take a commemorative photo and led me to the edge of the cliff. That's when Victoria tried to push me off. I dodged reflexively, but fell down the cliff. Her mother took a shaky sip of tea. Fortunately, I got caught in some bushes and survived. But I sensed them coming after me. I crawled down and escaped. Then I met a hiking couple on the mountain. They were former police officers. When I told them the situation, they immediately helped me. They hid me in their mountain cabin. Her mother pulled out an old photo album from under the sofa. There was a photo of a warm smiling middle-aged couple. Tom and Mary. They saved my life. Their doctor friend forged the death certificate. That's how I was able to live in hiding here for a year. Why did you wait a year? I was gathering evidence. All of their wrongdoings. James's corporate fraud, Victoria's past crimes. Her mother took a deep breath. And I was waiting for the right timing. Waiting for the FBI Insurance Fraud Division to begin their investigation. Rebecca stood up and walked to the window. Outside, gentle spring sunlight poured down. The overly peaceful scene made her lose her sense of reality, contrasting so sharply with the truth she had just learned. Mom, why did my husband? Debt. $5 million. Gambling and corporate fraud. He relied on his mother for everything. Victoria indulged her son to the point of allowing anything. But they had reached their limit. Her mother placed a hand on Rebecca's back. I wanted to protect you and April. But I couldn't act immediately. Without evidence, those two would surely retaliate. So I waited. Then you decided it was okay to meet me because... Yes. Because all the preparations are complete. The FBI has started moving. Now. At that moment, her mother's cell phone rang. It was from Tom. Hello? Yes. I understand. Her mother's expression changed completely. Rebecca, where is April right now? Huh? At school. What's wrong? Victoria apparently contacted the school saying she would pick up April. The blood drained from Rebecca's face. She looked at the clock. 15 minutes until dismissal time. Her mother had already grabbed her bag. Let's go. The time for hiding is over. It's time to face them, to protect those we love. Rebecca nodded. In her mother's strong gaze, she felt her own fear gradually melting away. Tom's car sped along the suburban roads. Her mother sat in the front passenger seat, while Rebecca desperately operated her phone in the back seat. She had just finished reporting to the police. Mary was already heading to the school in another car, they said. Tom checked the time. Mary should be able to buy us some time. Outside the car window, familiar streets flowed past like bands of light. In Rebecca's mind, April's morning smile overlapped with her mother-in-law's cold gaze. April, wait for us. Just then, her mother's phone rang. It was from Mary. Victoria has already arrived at the school. But I convinced the principal to keep April in the classroom. Rebecca's phone rang too. An unknown number. Hello? Hi, Rebecca. Her husband's voice. Her spine froze. I know where you are. You met with your mother, didn't you? Don't worry about April. My mother is going to pick her up. Actually, we've already completed the transfer procedures. What are you talking about? April isn't going anywhere. It's already decided. You seem to need some time to think things over. The call ended. Rebecca barely managed to suppress a scream. The car circled around to the back of the school. They parked in the shadow of the old gymnasium. As Mother and Rebecca got out, Mary came running up. April is safe. But Victoria is raising her voice in the principal's office. Just then, the school announcement system rang out. April Morrison, please come to the principal's office. Repeat. Rebecca instinctively tried to run, but her mother grabbed her arm. Wait. Going in directly is exactly what they want. We have evidence. All the evidence to prove their crimes. Now we need to stay calm. Rebecca took a deep breath. That's right. No more running or hiding. Let's use the staff entrance, Mary said. I'm a former teacher, so I know the building's layout perfectly. The group entered the school building through the gymnasium's back door. They advanced through the dim corridor. Children's voices could be heard in the distance. The principal's office is on the second floor. But before that, Mary stopped and pulled out a small digital recorder. Take this. Start recording as soon as Victoria starts talking. Rebecca nodded. She slipped the recorder into her pocket. As they climbed the stairs, her mother whispered, I'll go in first. Victoria will definitely be shaken when she sees me. But it's all right. This time is different. As they reached the principal's office, they could hear her mother-in-law's voice from inside. The reason I'm demanding custody of this child is. Her mother took a deep breath and opened the door. The room froze. The blood drained from her mother-in-law's face. Her expression was as if she'd seen a ghost. April, who had been sitting in a chair next to the principal, jumped up when she saw her grandmother. Grandma. April, don't move, Rebecca called out. What is this? Her mother-in-law said in a trembling voice. You're supposed to be dead. Yes, because you tried to make it so, didn't you? Her mother's voice was pure composure. But you failed, didn't you? Her mother-in-law grabbed the principal's desk to support herself. At that moment, rapid footsteps echoed in the hallway, and a series of FBI agents in black suits entered the room. Behind them, her husband appeared in a panicked state. Mother. James. Her mother-in-law's voice trembled. Why? One agent stepped forward. We have all the evidence. Insurance fraud, attempted murder, and... Silence, her mother-in-law suddenly screamed. I've been protecting this family. At her voice, April flinched. Rebecca immediately embraced her daughter. Her mother stepped forward. You've only been destroying the family. Spoiling your son, harming others, even trying to kill. I built a perfect family. A low-class woman like Rebecca. At that moment, April straightened up in Rebecca's arms. Grandma, why? Why are you being so mean? At that pure voice, the room fell silent. Tears began streaming down her mother-in-law's face. She looked like a different person from the dignified lady she usually was. She collapsed to her knees. The FBI agents moved swiftly, handcuffing her. Her husband was also restrained by other agents. As rites were being read mechanically, Rebecca held April tightly. Her mother joined them, and the three embraced. "Mom, is Grandma really back? This isn't a dream." "No, it's not a dream. We'll never be apart again." Her mother's hands gently enveloped them both. Outside the window, spring sunlight shone brightly. Cherry blossom petals danced in the schoolyard, accompanied by children's cheerful voices. "Rebecca," her mother said quietly. "It's all right now. We can live as a real family." April grasped her mother's hand. In that small hand, the new life of 3 generations of women resided as a tangible warmth. Outside the principal's office, police sirens were already wailing. Media was beginning to gather. Difficult days lay ahead. But there was nothing to fear anymore. "Hey, isn't it Mom's birthday today?" April suddenly said. "We can celebrate with Grandma." "Yes," Rebecca smiled. "This is the best birthday present of my life." Her mother gently stroked their hair. The spring breeze flowed through the window into the room, as if announcing a new beginning. The 3 women's new life began in a small town on Cape Cod, in a house with a distinctive white shell-lined approach. It was her mother's dream home with a garden overlooking the sea. "April, have you finished your homework?" Rebecca called from the kitchen. In the living room, April was baking cookies with her grandmother. The familiar aroma wafted throughout the house. "Almost. I'm doing math worksheets with Grandma." 3 months had passed since the incident. The trial that had shocked the public was over, with her mother-in-law receiving a life sentence and her husband sentenced to 20 years in prison. The media coverage had gradually died down, and they were now regaining a sense of normal daily life. "Oh, Rebecca," her mother peered into the kitchen. "Another work request." The computer screen displayed a design request from a major publishing house. Following the incident, Rebecca had gained attention in the industry, and work requests had increased dramatically. "Yes. As an illustrator for children's books." "That was your dream," her mother smiled gently. "April surely inherited her talent from you." April was also showing promise in art class at her new school. At the recent exhibition, her painting of 3 generations of women won a special prize. It was a work titled Hope, depicting the 3 of them together with blue birds flying around them. "Hey Mom," April came running from the living room with freshly baked cookies. "Can I help with the church bake sale on Sunday?" Her mother's cookies had become famous in the neighborhood. The new church community had warmly welcomed the 3 of them. "Of course. But before that, tomorrow is Saturday, right?" "Ah. Our beach picnic day." April bounced around. Weekend picnics by the sea were becoming a new family tradition. At dusk, the 3 sat on the deck in the backyard. The sea breeze was pleasant, and a lighthouse blinked in the distance. "Hey, Mom," Rebecca said quietly. "Are you still scared about that day?" Her mother shook her head slowly, listening to the sound of the waves. "I'm fine now." "Because," she said, stroking the head of April, who was dozing off in her lap. We have our precious treasure. Stars began twinkling in the night sky. Rebecca felt the happiness of being alive anew in this peaceful moment. The next morning, the three of them got up early and headed to the beach. No footprints yet marked the white sand. April was collecting seashells while playing with the waves. Look! Dolphins! A pod of dolphins was jumping through the waves offshore. April was overjoyed. Watching her, her mother spoke quietly. Yesterday, I received a letter from prison. Rebecca caught her breath. From James, her mother continued. He says he deeply regrets everything. Especially, he wants to see April. What should we do? That's for you to decide. But April has the right to know the truth someday. Rebecca gazed out to sea. Her husband's betrayal had deeply wounded her heart. But she couldn't remain imprisoned by hatred. That was what her mother had taught her. I'll think about it, Rebecca answered. But for now. Mom. Grandma. April waved. I'm hungry. They looked at each other and laughed. Opening the picnic basket, the three sat down on the sand. Her mother's special sandwiches, fruit, and cookies baked yesterday. Let's eat. Happy moments flowed by, accompanied by the gentle lapping of waves. The following Sunday, the church bake sale was a huge success. Her mother's cookies sold out immediately. April proudly sold cupcakes she had made herself. You really are a wonderful family. The church women's group leader approached them. God must have guided Rebecca, who worked so hard alone. Indeed, perhaps that was true. Even in darkness, there is always light. That's what her mother had taught her. That night, Rebecca began writing a letter. Dear James. For a long time, I hated you. But now, I feel a little different. As she wrote, she listened to April and her mother's laughter from the garden. They were searching for constellations in the night sky. Mom. A shooting star. At April's voice, Rebecca rushed out to the garden. Did you make a wish? Her mother asked. Yes. But it's already come true, April answered. Because I can be together with Mom and Grandma. Countless stars twinkled in the night sky they gazed up at together. They seemed like lights of new hope. A few days later, Rebecca's phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, Rebecca. This is David, from the children's book meeting the other day. The art director with the warm voice. After hanging up, Rebecca's cheeks were slightly flushed. He seems like a nice person, her mother said softly. Mom. Were you listening to? It's a privilege of mothers with grown daughters, her mother laughed. In the kitchen, April was helping prepare dinner. Her knife skills had improved considerably. Hey, what should we make tomorrow? Well. Her mother pondered. How about apple pie? We haven't made it in a while. April's eyes sparkled. Yay! I'll help peel the apples. The shadows of the three in the kitchen were cast on the wall by the setting sun. It was beautiful, like a painting. Oh, that's right, her mother suddenly remembered. Next month, Tom and Mary are coming to visit. Really? April jumped up and down. Will they tell me more interesting mountain stories? The two who had saved her mother's life had become like family now. At night, after putting April to bed, Rebecca was having tea with her mother on the deck. "Are you happy?" her mother asked. Rebecca thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes. More than ever before." The sea breeze gently caressed their hair. The story of their new family was just beginning. But there was no more uncertainty. This was true happiness. Her mother quietly stood up and went inside. Watching her mother's back, Rebecca thought, life sometimes presents cruel trials. But beyond those trials, there is always new light. In the living room hung the picture April had drawn. 3 women holding hands and smiling while blue birds soared around them. Those smiles were just like the 3 of them in reality.